Guys, let's, real quick before I get started, let's give Andrew and Michelle a big round of applause. They do such an awesome job. I used to go around and speak all over the country, various places, real estate events, and most of them are like pitch fests. You know, they're trying to sell you something all the time. And not that they're not good people, but you just kind of get this old hat. The level of instruction that you guys get here, the level of teaching that you get here, the heart behind it, it's really, you guys have it really, really well. I hope you know how good you have it with Michelle and Andrew. So I appreciate you guys so much. One of my biggest regrets when it comes to real estate is the fact that I didn't hold on to more property. I got my start wholesaling, and if you don't have any money, that's kind of what they tell you to do, is you don't have any money, you don't really have any resources, you got to get started wholesaling. So that's how I got my start, and I wholesaled everything. And there's kind of like two camps here. There's kind of two types of real estate investor here. There's the camp where you've got money, and you're trying to put money into real estate, and the biggest thing that you're looking for if you're that person is a return. You're looking for a good return on your investment and a safe investment. You're going to get it back in a timely manner, things like that. But then there's this, and ROI is probably the most important thing to you, if that's who you are and that's the camp you're in. And then there's this other camp where you don't really have much money, if any. You might have probably people that don't have a lot of money typically have a little bit more time on their hands. So you got a little bit of time, you don't have a whole lot of money. ROI is not important to that person. ROI is probably the least important thing. What does it matter what kind of return I'm going to get for nothing? I don't have anything. So what becomes most important is cash. It's how can I create as much cash as fast as I can create it. And that's the situation I was in when I first got started in 2012. I did my first real estate deal. It was a wholesale deal. I made $10,000. It completely changed my life. Not because $10,000 changed my life, but it was the mindset shift that changed, that said, you know what, now I can do this thing. And I don't know, I'm not going to call anybody out. I'm not going to ask you to raise your hands. But if there's anyone here today and you're in that situation where maybe you just got started in real estate, maybe you just did your first few deals and cash is important to you, I get it. I've been there. And I can't take that away. No one can take that away from you. No one can take that feeling away from you. No one knows that feeling better than you. But what I will say is figure out how you can hang on to as much property as possible from the very beginning. And so what I want to talk about tonight is some ways that we can do that. Maybe we got money, maybe we don't have money. Does that sound interesting to you guys? How can we start hanging on to property? Because let's go back to 2015. Who was living in this market? I'm not saying you're in real estate, but who's living in this area in 2015? Okay, maybe about half the room, maybe some people are not raising their hands. Think of an area like a 3-bed, 2-bath type of area where people, maybe a working class type of area where people want to be. People are flipping houses, maybe a $200,000 price point. Those houses probably in 2015 were what, $60,000, $80,000, $90,000? They've literally doubled in value or more since then. How many of those houses, I think back, how many of those houses did I wholesale? How many of those houses did I just wholesale for only like $4,000 or $5,000 wholesale fee? Maybe $8,000, maybe $10,000. And thinking back on all those properties, if I had hung on to them, the amount of equity, the amount of time it would have taken me to just fast forward my results, the amount of equity I'd have today, the position I'd be in today, if I just hung on to those. Has anyone ever thought about that before? I'm wholesaling all these deals, or they're telling me to wholesale all these deals, and they're great deals. If they weren't, no one would be buying them. They're really good deals. I'm trading all this equity for this one-time fee, this one-time feel-good fee. And entrepreneurs, by the way, in case you didn't know this, we are the worst. We're great at making money, but we're the worst at keeping money. And when you're talking about wholesaling, and I know I'm going to talk about a lot of things tonight. We're going to talk about flipping houses. We're going to talk about buy and hold. We're going to talk about a lot of things tonight. But I'm talking specifically about wholesaling. When you're talking about wholesaling, you get paid how many times? One. Or if you're really good, like I want to say I was. If you're really good at wholesaling, you'll get a wholesale fee. I was a realtor, so I would negotiate that I get the listing. Whoever I wholesaled it to, once you rehab it, I want the listing. So I'd negotiate the listing. I had relationships with private money lenders. Oh, you're going to buy this wholesale deal for me? I'm going to lend you the money too. So it wasn't even my money. I had such great relationships with people who had money that I basically just brokered the money and I took a point. So I got paid that way. I had great relationships with contractors. Oh, you want a contractor? Great. I'm going to upcharge you 20%, but you can use this contractor and he's great. So if you're really good at wholesaling, you can start making money a lot of different ways. And that sounds pretty cool, right? But what do all those different ways have in common?
All one time.
They all pay you one time. None of them are cash flow. None of them are I'm getting a check, I'm getting a rent check, I'm getting something all the time. But if I'd hung on to all these properties all those years ago, where would I be today? Where would you be today? Where would you be 5 years from now? If you stop wholesaling or stop thinking about wholesaling or thinking of yourself as a wholesaler and start thinking of yourself as a real estate investor. Because a wholesaler is not a real estate investor. A wholesaler is a marketer. So they're in sales and marketing. Let's start thinking like a real estate investors. So the big question of the evening becomes, how can I, in the position I am in today, my financial position, how can I start holding on to property? That's the question. Has anyone ever asked himself that question before? Has anyone ever thought about that? Or are you too busy chasing the check? The one-time check. It's cool. Feels great. It's not going to feel great 5 years from there. You're not even going to remember it. You're not going to remember that deal. But you will remember the actual real estate deal. So let's start talking about some of these things. So let's talk about, we talked about wholesaling. By the way, I'm probably going to go for maybe 30 minutes. I don't even have a presentation. I'm just going to kind of go off the cuff for about 30 minutes. Hopefully I'm going to ignite some kind of something inside of you that might bring about some questions, some dialogue. I want to spend the last portion of our time, if you guys don't mind, talking, taking some questions maybe, and just discussing some things. Does that sound okay? Can we do that? So I would say up until very, very recently, the way people in the last 10 years got rich with real estate was the BRRRR method. Anybody doing the BRRRR method? Does anyone know what that is? You buy, you rehab, you rent it out, and then you refinance it. You get your money back. So you can I call it recycling money before the BRRRR thing came along, but I just called it recycling money. You would take the same $50,000, $80,000, and then you would do the whole thing. You'd refinance and you get all your money back. And you just keep doing it over and over and over. And if one bank said, we got too many loans with you, you go to another bank. And you can do it more. You can just do it as many times as you want. People made a lot of money doing that. Andrew, I know, talks about that a lot. I think that's dead. It's dead now. Not to say that it won't come back, but with interest rates where they are, how are you going to cash flow those properties? You're just not. So that was one way people got pretty wealthy in the last 8 to 10 years. Another way, and I'm talking about people that aren't just putting their cash in and getting a return from their cash. I'm talking about actual people who are doing creative things. Seller financing. Seller financing was the other way, where people just hung on to a lot of properties, made a lot of money through seller. Anybody do any seller financing deals? Anybody doing anything like that? Raise your hand up really high if you're doing something like that. Nobody in here, so maybe we should talk about that. 3 people. So maybe we should talk about that. So those are the two things I see. And yeah, there's the people out there that had the money already and they got the return. Yes, I'm talking about creatively as a real estate investor. BRRRR, seller financing. Problem with BRRRR, interest rates, it doesn't work. The model does not work today. Not to say that it won't, not to say that interest rates won't come back down, not to say that it's not viable in the future. I know I'm good friends with hedge fund people, private equity fund people, and they're saying right now we've got stuff coming due that we have to refinance, and so we're just putting stuff on bridge loans. Interest only bridge loans, just so the cash flow will stay the same. So that's an option. You can do that. Seller financing. That's what I want to talk about for a minute. So let's say, hey, who's marketing for their own deals right now? Who's doing direct-to-seller marketing? Raise your hand up really, really high. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6-ish, 5.5. How are y'all getting your deals? If you're not going direct-to-seller, are you using wholesalers? How are you getting your deals? Just throw something out. MLS? Yeah. Okay.
Burn off the MLS.
Okay. You're burning off the MLS? Great. It was a great strategy.
Network and word of mouth.
What's that?
Network and word of mouth.
Networking? Networking with homeowners, direct to seller, or networking with other investors?
Current network is, people you currently know.
So wholesalers, people that have deals that might wholesale it to you? People with homeowners.
People
Yeah.
know that.
Absolutely.
Know what you do and
Absolutely. 100%. How is everyone else? Who's brand new, never done a deal? Maybe I need to back up a second. Who's brand new? Don't be scared. Brand new, never done a deal. I'm curious to know where you are right now. Are you in the I'm gathering information phase? Are you in the I'm in the middle of a deal, or I'm trying to do a deal? Are you brand new and don't know anything? Or you know a little bit and you're just trying to do your first deal? Yes. That's more what we're looking at. Okay. So what I would be doing for everyone in this room, especially if you're direct to seller, you've got a great network of people, you're trying to find deals, I would be trying to negotiate seller financing terms as much as I can. That is something that I did for a very long time, was very successful with. It's one of my favorite things to do in real estate. That's not going away and never will go away. But to negotiate a seller finance, you're direct to seller, you're not dealing with a bank. You're not dealing with people checking credit. You're not dealing with 8.5 or 8.9% interest rates. You're not dealing with the time it takes to do those loans. You're not dealing with someone who is way up there in the sky somewhere on a throne, it seems like, that has the power to say yes or no that this was a deal. You're dealing direct with the seller, and you can negotiate. And this is how I like to negotiate those deals. Anybody be interested in learning how I do this? This is what I like to do when I negotiate seller financing. There's 2 questions I like to ask. The first question is a question you should ask always, no matter what, is how soon are you looking to sell? When do you need to sell by? How soon are you looking to sell? Do you know why that question is important? That question basically reveals the motivation. Everybody asks, why are you trying to sell? No one gives them the actual answer. But when you ask, when do you need the money, or when do you need to sell by? And they tell you, I gotta sell yesterday. Well, you know something big's going on. If they needed to sell yesterday, well, something huge is going on in their life, and you can kind of start the conversation that way. Well, what's going on, and try to unpack that. Or if you get this answer a lot. Whenever. Just they're not motivated. They're not motivated to sell that piece of property. They don't. We're typically trying to deal with motivated people so we can get discounts on real estate. That's what investors do. So I like to ask that question. That's number 1, is when are you trying to sell by? It typically will reveal the motivation. Number 2 is, and I love this question, because if you really develop rapport and you really talk to a seller and get to know them as a human and them as a person, they're going to answer this question genuinely. And the question is, what do you need? What do you need? And you'll find that price is usually not, they're going to say it is, but it's usually not the most important thing. I remember one time I negotiated a 59-unit mobile home park. And I ended up spending hours with this guy over 2 different days. We ended up going to lunch. This has been his baby. He's had it for many decades. Mom and pop owned mobile home park. And I asked him, I finally just kind of kept the chase. What do you, because we were bickering over, interest rate, because he was going to sell we already agreed he was going to sell or finance it, but he wanted way more than what I was going to pay for it. And I'm like, well, tell me what you really need. Because he was at 1.1 million and I was at like 700,000. So we were pretty far apart. I was like, well, what do you need? He's like, to be honest, you know what I need? I need $6,000 a month to live. I'm like, okay. Now I have that information, and to me it's easy because, and I'm saying this to him, well, that's easy. Let's just do the math and back it into me paying you $6,000 a month. He's like, that'll work. I'm like, what if the purchase price is way lower? He's like, as long as you can get me $6,000 a month. So we ended up agreeing to a deal, $760,000 for a mobile home park. Now, amortized, which at 3 point, I think he was 3 point something percent interest is what he agreed to. And amortized over 30 years, it was only going to come out to like $3,000 a month, me paying him. That wasn't going to work for him. And it wasn't going to really work for me to do it the other way, because now, well, I didn't think, to make it $6,000 a month, I got to amortize it over 13 years. So that makes my payment way more, if you're following, it makes my payment way more than what it could have been if I'd have gone through a bank. But I'll be paying down the equity, the thing's cash flowing about $18,000 a month right now. Even though the debt's a little bit bigger than I want it to be, I can make that work. But I end up getting it for $760,000 versus 1.1 million. So just asking questions like, what do you need? Revealing the motivation will really help. And what you're going to find when you start negotiating with people who would possibly do a seller finance deal, what you're going to find is that purchase price is not, they think it's important, but it's really not the most important thing. That's number one. And you're going to reveal in them what is most important to them. It's how quickly can you get this done? Is it a headache property? Are you solving a problem? What is their problem? Are you solving the actual problem? Is there a tenant in there that's not paying? The bigger the problem solver you can become, the more money you're going to make. So that's seller financing. Anybody have any questions about how you might do that, how you might broach that subject with somebody? Again, a lot of times people think that they have the perception that we got to do this thing the way that the MLS is set up. We've got to do this thing the way real estate agents teach us to do this. Is it's got to go through a traditional buyer, through a traditional lender, and just having conversations directly with the seller you start to ask the actual questions. Well, what are you going to do with the money? Just put it in the bank. I mean, why not get a return on that money? If I pay you everything up front right now, you're going to have a pretty big tax bill. Just saying things like this and just opening up people's mind to carrying a note. And guys, right now, with the landscape the way it is, even if you don't agree that things are changing, I know Andrew showed some data, some lagging data, some data that is not caught up. That data is going to change for sure. But there's indicators that you could have put out that it is changing. But even if you agree that think that things are not changing and things are staying the same or they're getting better, even if you do agree with that or don't agree with that, you still need to learn these principles. You still need to learn seller financing, and you still need to talk to sellers in a certain way. And again, even if you don't agree with it, the perception right now is that things are changing. The perception amongst just what we see in the media, what we see when we come to events like this, when we're actually talking to people, and whoever it was back here asked a great question. Andrew's up here showing the data. And what are you actually seeing with properties that you have on the market right now? What are you seeing? That's a great question because the data doesn't show that. I've got a flip going on right now, and you're right. Days on market is very similar in Birmingham, very similar. About 4 weeks is average days on market. Well, I got a flip, I'm at 3 weeks, and I'm panicking. It's very real. I've already done a major price cut because the buyer pool is shrinked. Absolutely right. Buyer pool is absolutely shrinked. Still people buying. The buying power has shrinked as well. So you're talking about people who were 3 months ago, 6 months ago, they were over here they had buying power of going to buy a $400,000 house. That same buying power is now $250,000 just because of interest rates. So they've got these visions of we're gonna buy a house that looks like this, and now all of a sudden the real estate agent is showing them houses that look like this. And so, and couple that with what we're seeing on social media and what we're seeing in the media about the sky is falling, whether you believe it or not, the perception is out there that it is. And since it is, how can we as real estate investors take advantage of what's going on in the perception, at least? Or of what, in my opinion, what's going to be pretty bad for a while. So how can we take advantage of that? We can take advantage of that by just simply, who's a wholesaler in here? Raise your hand. Who's a wholesaler? Who is out there actually using this as, prices weren't what they were 6 months ago? You're using this. Statistically, prices have not changed. They haven't. The data hasn't caught up yet. It will, but it hasn't changed yet. But it seems like it has. Everything we're seeing and reading, it seems like it has. So now we can take advantage of that perception just by having different conversations with sellers. And you guys have the power to do that right now. You have the power to have those different conversations. Get properties at a much deeper discount than you thought, or get them and hold them through a seller financing model. How else can we hold properties? Seller financing is a great one. It's one I love. I have equity partners. So you've never thought of that before. I've got a really great deal over here, and I don't have the money to buy it, and I don't have the money to rehab it. So instead of asking the question, who can I sell this to get a wholesale fee, the question instead should become, who do I know that would want to partner with me on this deal? They can bring the money, and I can bring the expertise and the know-how. I can structure the deal. I can manage the deal. I can bring my expertise to the table. To someone who maybe has money but doesn't want to do all that work. So if I was just getting started and I was learning and saturating myself with great information, I would want to try to start building relationships with people, private individuals who have a lot of money. Over $1 trillion out of the stock market, by the way, in the last 6 months. Over $1 trillion out of the stock market in the last 6 months. Where's that money going? Where's that money gone? Banks? Where's that money going? It's got to be going somewhere. IRAs? There are people sitting on cash, mountains of cash right now, more than they ever have before. And they're looking for a safe place to park their money. Why not with you? Why not with you? Finding an equity partner is incredibly important. Equity partners. People who have money in exchange for you doing the work. Finding the deal, putting the deal together, managing the deal. Not managing the property in the sense that I don't want to go look for a tenant. You need to give that to a professional. But managing the managers, basically. And managing the cash flow of it. Does that sound like a good deal? Would anybody do that in here? You would 50-50 split ownership of a single family residence and it's rented out, that's cash flowing, where someone else brought all the money to the table and you did all the work, you found the deal. Would anyone do that in here? Only 3 people?
How do you, if you're saying someone should do that with no experience, how do you convince somebody?
Oh, no. Yeah, so, no experience is, so everybody started with no experience. So okay, I was having this conversation, I was having this conversation with somebody. What's your name? Darren, that's right. First deal I ever did was a wholesale deal. I made $10,000. The second deal I ever did in real estate, I bought a house in the worst part of Birmingham, found it on Craigslist for $2,000. 2. 1, 2. Let me ask Andrew, Michelle, or anyone who's savvy in this market, is it possible to buy a house for $2,000 in Columbia? Not impossible. Completely impossible. Completely impossible? I would completely challenge you on that. It's not possible?
It's not impossible.
Okay. All right. Regardless. Hey, I've got a YouTube video, by the way, how to buy a house for $1,000. Go check it out. It's on the REI Live YouTube channel. You should go check that out. Completely possible. I bought a house for $2,000, turned around, put it right back on Craigslist, sold it for $5,000. Actually, I was asking 10. The guy said I only got 5, and I'm like, cool, I'll take your 5 and I'll seller finance the rest. $300 a month for 18 months. It's the second thing I ever did in real estate. So going back to what was your name again, sir? Aaron?
Yeah.
Aaron said, what if I don't have experience? How do you get experience?
No, sorry. My question was, you were talking about equity partners.
I'm getting there. How do you get experience? By coming here?
By doing it.
How do you get experience? You got to go do it. Instincts.
Hands on.
You got to go. You got to get your hands dirty. How did I come up with that?
You did.
I mean, how did I come up with the structure? I mean, it seemed obvious. I didn't think I was like doing anything crazy ridiculous. It's like I'm asking 10. He said I'll give you 5, and I was like, well, I'd really like that 10. What's the creative way I can come up with to get the other 5 out of him? So how do I get more experience? I keep testing, I keep doing. If I'm brand new and I don't have any experience and I don't know how to find a deal, maybe I'm not finding an equity partner today, but maybe what I'm doing today is I'm learning the number one skill you need to learn in real estate is how to find a deal. You need to learn that. So let's go learn how to find a great deal. And once you do that 2 or 3 times, and now it's like, man, well, I know how to find a great deal. Now how can I start, instead of giving these deals to other people, how can I start hanging on to these things? So it's all kind of relative, but how can we hang on to these deals? How can we hang on to these deals? There's going to be more real estate deals going on from now, in my opinion, from now for the next 6, 9, 12 months than there has been in the past few years. It's been hard to find real estate deals if you're a buyer. It's been hard for the average, for a good deal finder. The great deal finders, maybe. It's been hard to find a really good deal. Now it's going to be a lot easier to find a good deal, especially with right now we can leverage some of the information that's coming out. We can leverage some of the panic. We can leverage some of the sky is falling mentality that is out there. We can leverage that to find great deals. Well, what are we going to do with those great deals? We can try to negotiate seller finance terms. We can look for equity partners. Okay? What are some other ways we can hang on to these deals? Sub 2. So we can do some creative stuff. We can start really digging into the creative stuff. Okay, so I don't want sub 2. I don't think that there's like one viable situation where you would need to do a sub 2 where an option contract wouldn't do the same thing, except better. Because here's the thing with a sub 2. And by the way, in case I don't want to get too, sub 2 means you're taking over a loan subject to the existing financing, subject to the existing mortgage. Therefore, you will own a property, but you will not own the mortgage. The mortgage is in someone else's name. And the mortgage stays in someone else's name while you take ownership of the property. The problem with that, in my opinion, it's my opinion, the problem with that is in real estate, I don't want to necessarily be owning a property that has some liability / risk associated with it when it comes to someone else's mortgage. And by the way, responsibility. That's an incredible responsibility that you have when you're paying someone else's mortgage like that. And I would just rather not go there. I'd rather just do a lease, do an option where I put an option contract on a piece of property. It's one of my favorite things to do in real estate. So how can we own more real estate? And we don't have enough money to buy all this real estate. How can we control? I should have said the word control from this outset instead of own. How can we control more real estate versus giving it away, versus just selling it for a one-time fee? That third way I want to talk about tonight is an option contract. Okay, using an option contract. Options are so powerful. Powerful because you're not locked in. Sub 2, you're locked in. You're the owner. You own the house. The deed's in your name. The title's in your name. Options, you don't have ownership. But you control it. You have all the benefits of ownership. You have most of the benefits of ownership without the liability. And now we can sit back and wait. If I put an option on a piece of property, now I can wait and see, what is this market going to do? Is this market is it going to do what a lot of people are predicting it's going to do? And it's going to tank? Are we in a recession? Or is it just it's just a little hiccup and it's just going to bounce right back? An option allows us to sit back and wait. And if you want to sit back and wait for a little bit of time, I've done a lease option where I put an option on a piece of property and I leased it out to someone else and I just waited. I used it as like a rental. I flipped a house with an option contract. You can do all sorts of things out of options. But the main thing is it doesn't lock you in. You don't own it, and you can sit back and you can wait, especially in a time like today. You can just control the piece of property for a period of time. And I kind of hate only having, I'm used to being on a stage and I do like 3-day seminars where I could actually like break this down. I can teach it to you. Today's kind of like a lot of theory and I really don't like doing that, but there's really no other way when you only have like 45 minutes or an hour. So I can get, Andrew, if you're okay with it, I don't even have anything. If you guys just want to email me, I can send you my seminar. I have the whole seminar on YouTube. It's unlisted, but I can send you the links if you want that, where I break down my option contracts and how to use them properly. I do break down sub 2. I'd go over everything. I don't want to step on your toes, Andrew, but wholesaling and fix and flip and anything in real estate, we go over all of that. It's a whole 3-day seminar. If you want that, just email me and I'll send that link to you. It's my name at gmail.com, briantrippe@gmail.com. Is my name on there? BrianTrippe@gmail.com, or you just DM me, find me anywhere. But my big thing today is, again, I don't want you guys to leave here or get started in real estate or get going in real estate and you look back in 3, 5, 10 years and you say, you know what? Man, all those houses that I had under contract for $25,000, $30,000, $40,000 are now worth $200,000. I had all those properties. I mean, we wholesaled probably 400 deals over the course of 3 or 4 years back in 2013, 14, 15, 16, 17, somewhere in there. So many deals. Just gave them away. And didn't need to, by the way. Didn't even need to. And I'm not saying, again, going back to one of my first points I made, I'm not saying don't wholesale. There's a huge difference between the people who are looking for an ROI and people who are just looking for air. I just need oxygen. I just need a little bit of cash right now so I can breathe. I get that. You need to go wholesale some deals, go do it. But let's try to hang on to some along the way as well. Questions? Scenarios, situations. I saw his hand first, and we're going to go over here. Yes, sir.
So with that option, I suppose the original owner, their taxes probably goes up, but if you're controlling the property and renting it out,
It depends. So I've had it happen both ways. Where you talking about the homestead exemption goes away? Is that what you're asking?
No, I'm more asking like the homeowner is going to be paying more in property taxes.
Because the homestead exemption goes away.
Okay, gotcha.
So I've had it happen both ways. And as a matter of fact, so it takes many years for that to catch up. Well, it takes some time for that to catch up. And it depends. I had one situation where a guy moved out of the house. He was already moved out of the house by the time he found me. He was living in another house, had another mortgage already, and his house was on the MLS, and it was expired, and it's just sitting there. And I'm like, well, let me put an option on it in exchange for I'll make your payments. I'll pay you rent in the amount your payments were, and I'm going to go and rent it out. Well, that homestead exemption actually never went away. He went to a different county where he lived now, and that homestead exemption never went away. So I've had actually many circumstances where the homestead exemption didn't go away, probably should have. And that's why your taxes would go up if you don't have the homestead exemption. But I have had a couple where, yeah, you're going to pay more in taxes.
And so I guess that just comes out the kind of like the negotiating for what they need.
Yeah, well, that situation was, yes. So, guys, there's a million different ways to do it. There's so many different ways to do it, and that's what makes it difficult. That's why it's difficult to teach. You just have to almost teach in theory, so that here are the principles, and go take these principles and you can apply it a million different ways. So with options, oh my gosh, there's so much to negotiate. Well, is there a mortgage or is there not a mortgage? If there's a mortgage, is it what's the mortgage look like compared to what it would rent for? I've had a circumstance where the mortgage is only a few $100s, but it would rent for like $1,200. So that's a situation where I want to rent that thing out for as long as I can. I want that to be a rental. But then there's situations where the mortgage is way more than what you could rent it for, and you got to use other strategies. You have to figure out what they need. Like in that situation, that example, they were paying 2 mortgages. They had already moved to another house. They were paying 2 mortgages. They needed mortgage. They needed relief. They needed me to come in and take care of their mortgage. So I negotiated a crazy low price. I actually just sold that property like very recently. I held on that property for like 6-7 years. And that's the great thing about an option. Is it's your option. I mean, I would typically do options for 5, 10, 15 years for the life of the mortgage or more, if I could. So I'm gonna sit there and pay his mortgage in that situation for as long as I can.
So with that option, let's say you do an option, 10-year option, meaning that, hey,
I have the option to purchase this or to not purchase this one day.
Now, does the option to purchase, does that come at the end of a term or could that be at the end?
Yeah. When I exercise it, there's usually a term. You have this window. Say you negotiate a 5-year option. I can purchase it anytime within those 5 years, or I can choose not to.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you also determine the purchase price of the time that
You do up front. You're supposed to up front. A lot of times, if there's a mortgage, what I'm just trying to think back to most every time I've done that with a mortgage, usually they're either underwater or close to underwater, and I'm hoping the reason I'm doing the deal is I'm going to pay down the mortgage and pay down the principal, and I'm hoping it appreciates both. So I'm gaining equity both ways, and I'm gaining cash flow because I'm going to rent it out in the meantime. Does that make sense? So I'm hoping that principal pay down, appreciation, and I'm going to take advantage of this equity that will exist one day. If it doesn't work out that way, I'm not going to exercise my option. I'm not going to buy it. I'm just going to have it rented that whole time, if the renting scenario works. There was a young lady who had a question. Yes, ma'am.
being informed, talking about sellers that, what do they need, talking to them about what they need. How do you have conversation with a seller who either A, doesn't know what they need, has a more private mentality of they don't want to dig deeper into, what do they need, how do they think, are they uninformed, misinformed by the media, social media, whatever. They don't want to go down that rabbit hole
With a stranger.
Right, or, even someone that they may know fairly well. What kind of conversation do you have with a seller like that that's a little harder to break into? To get them to break that mentality and or, try to help them see, what they do need to get to that point. Because a lot of people are self-reflective.
Yeah, well, it's trust. You have to build trust, and that takes time. I mentioned the scenario where I had the mobile home park. I spent so many hours with this elderly man. I mean, he was like 75. And by the end of it, he was like, I feel like you're my grandson, is what he said to me. I mean, I put in a lot of time. And it was genuine. I mean, I was genuinely, obviously I wanted the deal, but I mean, it was fun to talk to. It was great. Yeah. And so when it comes to stuff like that, you hear people talk about build rapport. Well, build rapport really is just building trust. People do business with people that they trust, know, like, and trust. And it just takes time, and you got to be good at it. I think I've listened to Chris Voss's book, Never Split the Difference. I've probably listened to it on audio 25 times because that's not even stuff that you can read once and get. You have to listen to it. I rarely listen to audiobooks. I like to actually read the book. But that's one of those ones I listen to a lot because he's got a lot of great, former FBI negotiator. He's got a lot of great tactics, a lot of great questions that you can ask people to try to break someone's, hard mentality. We've all gone into, well, maybe not all, but a lot of us have been doing real estate for a while. We've all gone on appointments where we've gone to the house, and I always like to say, show me around, because I want them to be there with me while I don't want to just be looking. Because I want to build rapport. I want to use that time to build rapport. And we've all, people who've been on appointments have all had the guy or gal and say, I'll be in here. You just go ahead. Or you'll ask them a question, a lighthearted question, see something and make a reference to something, and they're just shut off. That's natural. People are naturally untrusting like that. There are people like that. So you have to put in the time. One thing I will say is once you do put in the time, has anyone ever bought Girl Scout cookies? Ever? Has anyone ever bought those dumb popcorn tin things from your kid or from somebody else's kid? Has anyone ever done that? Did you get a good deal on it? No, you got ripped off, didn't you? Why'd you do it? You did it for them. You did it because you like them. People will overpay. They'll way overpay, as a matter of fact, as long as they like that person. Yes, sir. Aaron.
I was just asking the options contract.
Yeah.
Are you paying, because obviously they're just giving up the right to lease or sell.
Well, they have a problem, right? They're not calling you if they didn't have a problem.
Fee on top of it, like when you do options.
It depends. Okay. Everything depends. So to have I should have said this earlier. I'm not an attorney. I'm not a CPA. Anything that comes out of my mouth is for entertainment purposes only. I have to say it. I'm not an attorney, but most states will say you have to have consideration for it to be a legally binding contract. There has to be some sort of consideration. So in exchange for the option to buy the house, you would have to have given them something. Consideration does not mean money necessarily. It's anything of value. So I've exchanged things like, okay, I'll pay your mortgage. I'll pay $200 a month towards your mortgage. Things like that. Is this helpful to anybody tonight? Just making sure. Few of y'all didn't say yes, so I'm coming talk to y'all after.
I think it's the book title again. If you
Never Split the Difference. Chris Voss. Yeah. I did an interview with him before he got really famous. Right when the book came out, I got to interview him. And then he became so famous you can't get an interview with him. He's coming out with a brand new book. I think it just came out. But Never Split the Difference is probably the best negotiating book you could buy. The best book on negotiation. He's a former FBI hostage negotiator. It's one of those things I would recommend the audio. I hardly ever recommend audio, but it's one of those things you got to listen to a lot. What else? Is that it? Yes, ma'am.
For wholesaling, I can say, what do you recommend as far as finding deals?
How to find a deal? That's one thing I really didn't talk about, and I actually had it on my notes to talk about, is relationships and building relationships with people. And somebody mentioned over there their network. I think one of the reasons, I would say the biggest reason I became successful at real estate is because I was incredibly intentional about building my network. So coming to events like this is important, but it's not just like, mingling around and, hey, but it's small talk. It's being intentional. So you guys are all in this room for a reason. So I would literally ask yourself right now, what is the number one reason why I'm here tonight? And I know it's not to come here from me. It's at all. It's, why am I here? Am I here to just meet people? Or am I here because I have this very specific need and I do need to meet this one person or this one type of person that can solve this problem? Ask who, not how, right? Ask who. Who can help me solve this one problem I have right now? So what I do, anytime I go to an event, if I'm paying to go to an event or I'm going to an event intentionally, why am I going? Oh, because I need this one thing. I'm trying to find this one person. Number two, the second thing I'll do is I'll go straight to the event organizer and I'll say, this is what I'm looking for. Now there's gonna be a line to come talk to you, Andrew. This is who I'm looking for. I'm looking for people who fit this description or do this or whatever. I'm looking for cash buyers. I'm looking for whatever. Can you connect me with one? And I always like to say this, can you make a warm introduction for me? What's a warm introduction? Can you actually take me over to this person and physically introduce us and to make sure that we start the conversation? And now you're all of a sudden, you're intentional about being at a networking event instead of just coming and showing up and listening to someone talk about something that you may or may not be applicable to your situation, and you just came for the free alcohol or whatever. But just being intentional. So how to find deals, to answer your specific question, I would start, if I were brand new, I don't even care if I had millions and millions of dollars. If I'm brand new, how I would start, really with anything, because all of real estate starts with a good deal. All of real estate investing starts with a good deal. So if you've got to become great at finding deals. Not to say that you're going to do that forever, that you'll be the actual deal finder, but you have to be able to recognize what a good deal is and you have to know how to find it. So what I would do, if I'm just starting, is I would start driving around and I would start looking for obviously vacant houses in decent areas. And I would start jotting down addresses. And I start jotting them down. I'm not going to go buy anything. I'm doing this for free. I'm not buying the app. I know everybody talks about Deal Machine. David Lecko's a great friend. I endorsed it. It's awesome. But if I'm brand new, I want to start this thing bootstrapped, and I want to do this thing no money, because if I use a tool that helps me, which I will use in the future, but if I use that now, am I really going to learn? I need to learn how to do this stuff. So I'm going to go and jot down a bunch of addresses. I'm going to go I'm sure you can go somewhere online here in this county and actually find out who the owner is of a property. Can you do that for free online? So I'm figuring out what that is exactly. Go ask people who know this area and trying to figure out who the owner is. And I'm going to fastpeoplesearch.com or something like that. And I'm looking for phone numbers and I'm calling them up. And I'm saying something like, I'm sorry, I may have the wrong number. I'm not even for sure. But I'm looking for the owner of 123 Main Street. And if you've ever, there's a great video on my website. If you ever listen to Brent Daniels, who does this whole thing about talk to people, how to talk to people on the phone. He did a presentation at one of our REI Live events in Birmingham where he broke down, there's only 6 things people can say. F you is one of them. But there's only 6 things somebody can say to you. So having like an answer for all those 6 things, they're rarely going to just say, yes, I'll sell you my house. So you have to kind of finesse it a little bit, but you have to kind of play it like, I forget. I don't even know if this is. Forgive me. I'm sorry. Is this all right? I'm looking for this. You wouldn't be interested in selling that property, would you? I just drove by and noticed that nobody was there. Nobody's living in it. It looks a little, like there hadn't been anybody living in it for a while. You're not interested in selling it, are you? Oh, you are? Well, great. I would love to have a conversation with you. What, have you tried to sell it in the past? And just go through your normal questions. So, but I would start that way if I'm looking for deals. I mean, if I had absolutely nothing and if you dropped me off in the middle of a town I've never been in before and you gave me internet access and a car, I promise you I'd be finding deals very, very quickly. And I would be doing that strategy right there. Yeah. What else? Last thing, last question, and then you guys can come see me.
Just where can we find your YouTube?
Yeah, REI Live. I have a YouTube channel, REI Live. Started that. Yeah, there's anything and everything you would need or want about real estate. I've interviewed all the biggest and baddest investors in the planet. A lot of podcasts are videoed on there. A lot of presentations are on there. Again, if you want my seminar presentation, it's a 3-day seminar, I'll send that to you guys. It's an unlisted link, but I'll send you guys the link for that. Just email me or shoot me a message, DM me.
We can, we'll put it on the Facebook group. We'll put your YouTube link. So we'll put it in the Facebook group.
Awesome.
Here's the YouTube link and then your contact info, if that's okay.
Sure.
All right, go ahead. Let's give it up.
Thank you guys. Appreciate you, brother.